Hey everyone, we are here with Flower's 4 surviving quintuplets. They were born yesterday morning unexpectedly because she was in the regular barn. We couldn't watch her on the video like we normally do goats that we're expecting to kid. And she was in the regular barn rather than the kidding barn because she was only at day 141 of her pregnancy. And day 145 is really the earliest that they should give birth. So it has been probably close to 15 years since we had kids born premature. And they are having some challenges. Mom's having challenges. Basically, mom is not making enough milk, but that's really not a problem because when we found the kids yesterday, they were unable to stand. So we eventually brought them in the house and we are bottle feeding them. The littlest guy right here had hypothermia when we found him, and it took time to get him warmed up. He's had trouble maintaining his body temperature, so we have had to repeatedly get him warmed up. Right now, there's a heating pad under that towel, so that's why he is laying where he is. And his legs, I think he was stuck in utero because this was a yearling who had 5 kids, which is crazy. And mom, I think he was stuck in utero with these legs straight out because he's actually only stood twice today. He never stood yesterday. And that leg just keeps going out. Both legs, actually. So a lot of times I hear him screaming and I come out here and I see he's got his 2 back legs stretched straight out behind him like a frog. And he is basically stuck like that. He cannot get himself up. So anyway, everybody here is getting ready for a nap because they just had their afternoon bottle. Being so small, I am only able to get an ounce in them. And actually this afternoon was the first time I got an ounce in everybody. Prior to this afternoon feeding, I was only able to get an ounce into one of the does. And so I've got some notes here that I've been keeping. So in case you're wondering, so this little guy here is Thor. And this little girl is, let me see, I got to see her front leg. I can tell them apart by their front legs. I'm pretty sure. Let me see. Yep. This little girl here is Roberta. That little guy is Trevor. And this one is Hetty. And if you know what the theme is here, tell me in the chat. We've got, Mama is named Flower. So Flower's babies are Thor, Hetty, Roberta, and Trevor. And if you need another hint, named that little guy Trevor, the troublemaker, after his namesake, who's always getting himself into trouble. And this little guy we named Thor because we thought that he could use Thor's energy and power because he really had none yesterday. He was the worst of all of them when we found him. He was laying flat out on his side, looking very dead. I thought he was dead when I saw him. And then I realized he was alive. And so we immediately started working on getting him warmed up with the heating pad and under a heat lamp. But the thing is, the minute he's not on that heating pad or the heat lamp, under the heat lamp, he gets cold again. So we got to keep him warmed up so that he can keep digesting that colostrum that is so very, very important for him. So looking over here at these guys, I got to figure out how to tell the difference between Roberta and Hetty based on their top markings, because right now I'm doing it. They are so similar with their markings. I know it when I see their right front leg, because the right front leg on Hetty is solid. So this is Hetty. See, the right front leg is solid. So this is Hetty, and her sister is Roberta. And she's got a white around her front leg. So I've done a lot. I've taken a lot of videos in the last 24 hours, 30 hours, and a lot of photos and stuff. So I want to put together a video for you guys that gives you more details about what all they have been through. I was really worried about Thor until this morning. Thor still has not gained any weight. It's very hard to get anything into him. He was the smallest of all of them. He was 1.7 pounds, so that's like 1 pound 12 ounces at birth, which is really small. Most of our Nigerians are born at 3 to 3.5 pounds. That's very common. And 2 days before these guys were born, we had a set of twins. One of them was actually over 5 pounds, and his sister was over 4 pounds. So it was pretty wild seeing these guys in the kidding pen next to them when they weigh like over twice as much as any of these guys. So I'm just gonna look through the chat real quick and see if there's any questions that I need to answer. Yep, these are baby goats. They're baby Nigerian dwarf goats. And they were, our goat Flower actually had quintuplets, and they were premature. They were born at day 141. They should have been born between 145 and 150. So they're premature. They're very small, and it has been quite a struggle for the last 30 hours getting them to take a bottle. It takes me about 45 minutes to get less than an ounce into each one of them. So I was up at 3 o'clock this morning, giving them a bottle, and each one consumed about 3/4 of an ounce at 3 a.m. this morning. So someone just asked, what is the right way to deal with baby goats just after birth till they pass the critical stage? Well, the first thing you want to do, now these are premature kids, which is why they're in the house, because normally all the kids are out with their mom. You know, those kids that were born 2 days before them never left their mom, never left the barn. They're out there nursing. These guys are early. Only one of them was able to stand initially. 2 of them took a few hours to stand. And one of them, Thor here on the left, he never stood until this morning about 11 a.m. So well over 24 hours of age. And he stood for a few seconds and then fell down. And I have not seen him stand again. So I'm gonna let this continue to run for a while. And if anybody sees, so I think they've all fallen asleep now after their afternoon bottle. But I'm gonna let this run for a little bit. And if you see Thor here move, leave a message in the comments at what time, so that I will know that he actually moved. Again, or not moved, but stood up. So he's only stood once, and it was today. So, but basically, to answer the question of the person that said how to deal with baby goats just after birth, the most important thing is to make sure that they are warm and dry and that they nurse. If they're not warm and dry, they can get hypothermia, which is what happened to these guys, because they were not, the mom was not in the kidding barn because she wasn't due yet. And so we have in the kidding barn, we've got video so that we can watch them, and we can go out there when they're born so that we can make sure that they're dry and warm and that they nursed from mom. But since she wasn't due yet, she wasn't going to get moved to the kidding barn for at least a couple more days. There was no camera, so she gave birth, and she's a first freshener. She's a yearling, which is what makes it really crazy that she had quintuplets. And she basically, like most first fresheners, had no idea what was going on. So she, gave birth to one kid, got up, walked away, gave birth to another one, got up, walked away. So these 5 kids were just scattered all over the barn. And so they didn't even have each other to cuddle up to be warm. And so the littlest one, I feel really certain it died from hypothermia because it was the smallest. It was 1.5 pounds. Little Thor here, who was 1.7 pounds at birth, has been struggling with hypothermia this whole time. And there's a heating pad under the towel that he's on to keep him warm, because whenever he's not warm, he's not on the heating pad, his mouth winds up cold again. And it's very, very important for them to stay warm, because if they're cold, if they get hypothermia, their digestive system shuts down so that their body can put more energy into trying to keep them warm. And so unfortunately, if he gets cold, before we feed him again, we have to warm him up again. So it's just easier to keep him on that heating pad so that it keeps his body temperature up. And sometimes, even though he can't stand, he scoots with those little legs. He scoots all over, and I find him off the heating pad. And when I put my finger in his mouth to open his mouth to put the nipple in there for the bottle, it's cold again. So then we got to get him warmed up again. So anyway, it looks like everybody fell asleep now. So I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. But definitely never assume that babies are going to start nursing. Somebody sent me a message like that, because we have our Goats 365 membership. And, one of our members just messaged me yesterday and said that she had baby goats born, and one of them hadn't gained any weight yet and is 2 days old, and she's wondering what she should do. And the answer is, if they haven't gained any weight, you got to start bottle feeding them, because they can't survive without gaining weight. They have to gain weight and grow. And so she's just, for whatever reason, she's not nursing enough or whatever, because mom is full of milk. And I don't know why people are shy about milking out a milk goat if the kids are nursing and the mom is overly full. Like, it's really important that you milk her out so that she doesn't get mastitis, and so that she keeps producing milk. Because if a kid is having trouble nursing, you need to figure out why, or just get them switched to a bottle. So these are the kind of questions, the kind of things that we help our members with in Goats 365. So hopefully that answered your question about how to take care of baby goats after they're born. 3 most important things: warm, dry, and nursing, so that they're getting food. So if you guys want to hang out and watch the kids sleep a little longer, you can. I'm going to go ahead and let this keep running. Bye for now. otherwise, if you buy a bread dough and the sale day is the day you pick up the dough, the litter is considered the property of the seller, and you have to go through them to get the kids registered, and the kids would have their birth name. Do you have time to go through the premature section of the parasite course soon? I see nothing urgent here, so you should be able to go through the course with plenty of time to do something if needed.
Recording in progress.